It's my great pleasure and honor to be here with you this evening. My name is Farah Nayeri. In a little while, I'll explain who I am and what my connection is to Zaha Hadid. But I did want to introduce my two very wonderful and key panelists. The initiator of this beautiful project you're in, the OPUS, OMNIYAT CEO Mahdi Amjad, who is the initiator of many projects around Dubai, and of course the CEO and founder of the company, and Zaha Hadid Architects director Christos Passas, who was the project director of the building we're in, among many others. So please welcome to the stage Mr. Mahdi Amjad and Mr. Christos Passas. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
So it's great honor for me to be here and a pleasure for more than one reason. I will list the reasons. There are probably more. First of all, because we are inside the OPUS, this beautiful Zaha Hadid Architects project. He agrees with me, I think. Schumacher Jr. agrees with me. Secondly, because the discussion is with two key personalities who I just introduced, the initiator of this project and of so many more around Dubai, OMNIYAT founder and CEO Mahdi Amjad, and thirdly, of course, because we will be in discussion with the man who led this project on behalf of Zaha Hadid Architects, Christos Passas, who is, of course, one of the directors of the firm. And thirdly, because I am sitting here before so many talents and great designers and creative minds from Zaha Hadid Architects. So many of you here have contributed to making this firm the great success that it is. And so thank you very much for offering me this opportunity. Thank you. I'm not sure why you're clapping. I haven't done anything yet. Thank you. Before I turn to my speakers, I wanted to sort of give you a little idea of why I am up here this evening and not someone else. I want to explain my connection with Zaha. My name is Farah Nayeri. I'm originally from Iran, and I'm an arts and culture writer for the New York Times, as well as an author and a podcast host. In my previous life, I was the arts correspondent in London of Bloomberg, and as such, I interviewed Zaha 7 or 8 times in my lifetime, which is quite a lot for a journalist, I think. And I just wanted to recall my first interview with her, just to kind of give you a little bit a note of slight amusement, I hope. Because that meeting was epic in so many ways. First of all, the interview would never have happened, and I would definitely not be sitting here today without a wonderful person named Roger Howie. I knew his name would draw applause. Zaha's head of media relations, and I think I can safely say one of her most trusted advisors. And Zaha agreed to talk to me. I met her, I bumped into her at an opening at Tate Modern in London. We were going up the steps of this escalator or something, and I said, oh, Zaha, you know, I'm Farah, blah, blah, blah. Will you please talk to me? And she said, yeah, sure, talk to Roger. So I did. Of course, that is the response that Zaha gives to any member of the media. And so I talked to Roger, and I talked to Roger, and I talked to Roger some more. And somehow this interview never really happened. And I waited, and it took 2 years to get a date in the diary with Zaha. If not 3, I can't remember, but it was a long time. And so on the afternoon of August 6, 2007, a day that I will never ever forget, I headed over to the offices of Zaha Hadid Architects, which were then, as you know, on Bowling Green Lane, and this was a former school. And it was still had, the signs of being a school. There's, one sign or etching said boys entrance, another one said girls entrance, and I thought, well, where's the architecture firm entrance? So I walked up to a group of boys, young designers, standing around having a cigarette break, and I said, excuse me, hi, I'm here for Zaha Hadid. And one of them looked at me and with a completely straight face said, we all are. And of course I put that in my story, because it was wonderful. And then Roger, of course, greeted me warmly and he gave me a tour of the office. I went around, I saw hundreds of architects working just so hard at their desks. And I was also pointed to Zaha's desk, which had 3 shocking pink, sort of fuchsia-colored armchairs around it, and it was definitely distinctive. And so, I was chatting with Roger, having a nice time, waiting for Zaha. So I waited, and we waited maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour and a half, 2 hours, and still no sign of Zaha. And I didn't mind, it was Friday night, no problem. So eventually Roger gets a call and Zaha says, no, I want the interview to take place at my house. In those days, of course, journalists were almost never invited into her apartment. We're talking August 2007, and the only other journalist who had ever been, interviewing her there was Melvin Bragg, who was this, much older, kind of fairly stodgy presenter of a BBC history program. And I was enchanted to be there with Roger, arriving and seeing her there. And Zaha seemed fairly relaxed around me, and I kind of wonder why, and I think I know why. Probably because I was from Iran originally, probably because maybe 4 years earlier I had actually been a reporter in Baghdad. I spent a month there reporting on the American occupation and the war for Bloomberg. So I knew her native country, and it was next to mine. And probably also because she thought that I would avoid the xenophobia, the stereotyping, and the misogyny that so many unsophisticated British reporters had displayed when writing about her. They basically didn't understand Zaha and made no effort to understand Zaha. So I think I passed that first test. And Zaha was sitting behind one of her wavy dining tables, one of these gorgeous pieces of furniture which she designed herself, and right in front of one of these ravishing Malevich tectonic paintings, which all of you know. And I noticed that the color of her lipstick perfectly matched the patches of red in the painting behind her. And of course, this was no accident. She was Zaha Hadid. She would have understood the importance of the color of lipstick. And I looked at her and I thought, gosh, this is nice. And so I said, Zaha, can I take your picture? You look great. And then suddenly I saw the color fade from Roger's face. It's like, he looked absolutely petrified, and I thought, gosh, what have I said? And I realized impromptu photography was maybe a little problematic. But for some reason, she said, yeah, sure. So I pulled out my stupid little Nokia or Ericsson, flip open phone. It was just, before the iPhone, and, it was just a really clunky piece of equipment, and clearly I wasn't going to publish it. And she sat for my picture, and I still have it, and it is one of the great memories that I have of that day and of Zaha. And I'm going to turn to you soon, but it was the first of about 7 or 8 interviews that I had with her. And as we sat down, she said, would you like fruit juice? Would you like some juice? I said, sure, love some juice. And then she goes, this is going to make a lot of noise. And I thought, what is going to make noise? And then the blender went on, and it sounded like, a helicopter gunship from Apocalypse Now. It was just something really, really deafening. And she really didn't want noise on a Friday night. So we sat down, I asked a question, maybe 1, 2 questions, and I thought it was going well. Roger was sitting there doing his emails on his BlackBerry, And then she looks up suddenly and she goes, Roger, stop doing BlackBerry emails. And then she just said, get out. So poor Roger spent the rest of the interview, which was an hour and a half, traipsing up and down her balcony. So that was my first encounter with Zaha. But I would like to hear from you, what was your first encounter with, and when you first actually found out that there was an architect named Zaha Hadid, because there's an interesting, very interesting story there.
Thank you, Farah. First of all, thank you very much for everybody who's here. Thank you for the guests, Dr. Habib al-Mulla, Mr. Ali Burhama, Mr. Muhammad, Abu Said. Thank you very much for all the guests who has joined us. Some of the government officials who have been part of this unique journey has taken their time today on Sunday to join us, so thank you. And thank you for all the architecture team. Patrick, thank you very much for being here in such a special day. Now, if I go on saying every story I have of Zaha, we'll be all night here. And Christos will not even start. But I can tell you the first impression. I went and, let's start before that, the question was, yeah? So I started on a quest when I bought the first plot of land here in Business Bay to go to find out how can I build special buildings. And I went to London to Piccadilly bookstore.
The Waterstones on Piccadilly.
Yeah, the Waterstones, exactly. On the third floor on the corner.
It's the biggest bookstore in London.
It's the biggest bookstore in London. And I spend, my wife is laughing because I spent 3 days there reading architecture books and trying to list down my top 6 architects. Actually, it was supposed to be top 5, but I could not make a choice, so I made the top 6. Architects that I would like to do business with and I would like to build these special buildings with. And here I see some very unique architect that is doing very futuristic architecture. I did not even know who Zaha Hadid is. This was my first encounter.
And this was what year? This was
2005.
1 year after she won the Pritzker Architecture Prize, which is the most important distinction in architecture, but she was not yet a household name.
Very much so. But I see this architect who's doing these futuristic buildings today. And then I said, and she's built the BMW factory in a very futuristic way as well. It was so I said if she can build these unique factories for such an important brand, I'm sure she will be credible. That was my credibility check. And I was after finding these architects who build the future. This city of Dubai is a city of the future, a city that like to bring the future to present moment. His Highness always says, that's what we need to do. We don't need to wait for the future to arrive. We want to bring the future here, today. And here was the moment I said, so she's on my #1 list of the architecture. Of course, from there I had Norman Foster, Ram Koolhaas, Santiago Calatrava, Richard Rogers, and Renzo Piano. So it was a nice list. And I went back to my office and said to my team, well, I got my 6 architects and I would like to work with these guys to build special buildings in Dubai. Our name means wishes. OMNIYAT in Arabic means wishes, and our philosophy is we'd like to realize our customer wishes. And we address this very unique segment of the market, so we want to build special buildings. That was simple, right? Of course, everybody said, forget about it. We are a startup. How can you have these star architects even accept to work for you? Mr. Ali Burhama will know very well what that means. And Muhammad Bahri. These are architects that have to evaluate if they want to work for government, let alone a startup company. But I said, no, I would like to give it a try. So I went to the same office, the same door that you're referring to, and I had a very good marketing head, if you remember, Christos, that took up the challenge. Yes, took up the challenge to fix me meetings. I said to him, your challenge #1 is to fix me 6 meetings. If you can fix 6 meetings, everything else will work out. Ihsan also will remember Ihab quite well, and those days with us. And I had a meeting with supposed to be Zaha Hadid, but Christos shows up.
He doesn't look very much like her, but never mind.
Yeah. So I go and have a meeting with Christos, and And I just explained what I'm looking for and how committed I am to building special buildings. And it's not a slogan, it's not an objective, it's a real objective that I would like to drive. And he was very nice, received me, but he said, Zaha's not available. I said, okay, no problem, I'm in Dubai. Sorry, I'm in London, so let me know, maybe I can come back, maybe she got busy. And well, I got a call back the next day and said, Zaha accepted.
Wow, lucky you.
Yeah. I think it was 3-4 days later, I came back, and in the same meeting room, I met Zaha.
So how was that first meeting with Zaha? Tell me. Were you intimidated?
I think everybody's here intimidated by Zaha Hadid, so I think everybody's aware of Zaha here. So, yes, was very intimidating. She's really intimidating. She has a present and very limited smile. None really. So, and takes a meeting very seriously. Now she goes and says, how committed are you to making these special buildings? You know, these are not easy, you know. I said, of course, I am committed to make special buildings, but I need you to understand, I am a commercial proposition. I am not government trying to build a museum. So as long as you can make it commercially viable, I am highly committed to deliver an exceptional quality buildings. And that is the main challenge. So I want to be honest here with you that some of my team members says, you don't know how to do that.
Oh, she must have liked hearing that.
Exactly. So I think, when I look back, maybe one of those reasons why she took the challenge up, it was that, because she likes to be challenged. She likes to say, I felt like over the time, and that was the beginning.
I like the way that you speak about her in the present tense, because I think Zaha is always with us and will always be with us, and she's the reason why we're all here. It's a kind of extraordinary presence who is always there. And so before I go to Christos, I did want to ask you how you felt the project went on the whole. I mean, I realized that there were a number of moments when you had a design, and I think Christos might have worked on it for 6 months, and then she'd walk in and then say, no, this is no good, right? There were these moments.
Yeah, I mean, the journey just began from there. Of course, she was the first on my 6 list to say, yes, we will do a building for OMNIYAT. And I still say to Foster & Partners, you said yes to me only after Zaha Hadid, and I will never forget that. And today I have 2 other buildings as well with Foster's. I've done a building with Richard Rogers in London, and I had the pleasure of working with Ramco House, but unfortunately the land was cancelled in Lagoon, if you remember. But the school of architecture our design aspiration that I have learned by working with Zaha has truly changed OMNIYAT and changed me forever. The design appreciation and the persistency that Zaha had to actually make it perfect was unbelievable. And the stories are many, so I don't know how many you want in the list, but the story is many to tell you the journey of the OPUS. And I'm sure Christos will have his own stories to say.
Yes, exactly. I think I would love to hear from Christos at this point. Christos, can you tell us a little bit of the story of this great adventure, which we're sitting in right now, this OPUS adventure, which is the one you embarked on with, OMNIYAT?
Well, good evening, everyone, first of all. It did start in such a way, as Mahdi explained. We had a meeting in the office one day. I think that day Patrick and Zaha were working on another scheme somewhere overseas. I received him, we had a good conversation. Then I went back to Zaha, I said, we have our first project in Dubai. You have to meet this man because he's very serious, he's very excited. Who is this guy? I don't know. Wasn't sure. It took 2-3 minutes. I said, this is definitely a meeting you have to have. And so when Patrick and Zaha came back to the office, we had a conversation, we arranged the meeting, and we did have a very good conversation. I think it went very easy. I was surprised because everything just fell in place together as if something that was meant to happen. And Mahdi's first thing was exactly, I want an architecture, a commercial masterpiece. At that time, we were also a young company growing into different parts in the world. And we were a very young team, in fact. And Patrick knows, and the other colleagues who've been with us at that time, how much of a learning curve that whole process was for us to learn to design well, to learn to execute well, to detail buildings, contracts, to do the whole spectrum of architecture. And he says, I want a commercial masterpiece. We're like, what is that? So we knew what an architectural masterpiece could be, but how to also make it commercially viable was the big challenge here. And so the strategy that we developed, this I must say, this was a process of co-creation. You know, there were, of course, Zaha was guiding and harnessing the whole process. I was getting a lot of advice from Patrick throughout, who's also been a great mentor to me over the years, and teacher. We know each other for more than 25 years already, maybe 27 actually, to be precise. And the strategy that we followed was to do something simple, as simple as we could do in any case. And the OPUS really is an idea on duality, is an idea that explores straight lines and curvilinear lines. So the curvilinear line, the fluidity, which is Zaha's signature style, really sits within a solid volume, which is there to denote the absence, which becomes the iconicity of the building, if you understand what I mean. So that absence, that void, and the contrast between the solid and the void has constantly played out throughout this building, through the coloring schemes, through the change from light to darkness, through the solid and the void, through the straight line and the curved line. And I think that was Zaha's really incredible mastery of the architectural space, was in bringing these types of geometries together. And geometry is important because it forms space, it forms environment, it forms social sort of strata. And I think that was sort of how we started in the process.
I'd love to hear from Patrick later on, because we're going to open this up, and I would encourage you to come up with comments or questions, mainly questions, but from Patrick, we'd love to hear some commentary about this project, because I've been on panels with Patrick. He's a great speaker, and tonight he's not on the podium, but I certainly would love to hear from you, Patrick, later on, not too much later. But I did also want to hear from you how difficult it was to negotiate, because let's face it, you've got him on one side and you've got Zaha on the other. You're kind of sandwiched between two, I guess, important and forceful personalities, because I mean, I'm sure you're charming, but I mean, you've got to be forceful too, right, to get something like this built. So, you know, what was that like? And tell us some stories of glitches, bottlenecks, you know. Tell us some of that stuff.
Do you know what is
I need to take over that, because Christos is too polite. He won't say it.
Go ahead.
But if you want to, I have few videos for you, but for the evening to start with. So they designed this beautiful cube, and it's perfect, right? And of course, we all fell in love with it in the office, and as Christos said, it's all simple and efficient, and the only challenge is putting this bridge together up and build the middle facade. So yeah, we always go in and say yes, but we said, this doesn't comply with authority. This doesn't comply with any law. It actually ignores everything of the law of the master plan.
Yeah, I mean, there was planning permission to get, and this
Very
design
much so.
broke all the rules in the planning permission. Just
because
tore up the rule book.
you are supposed to sit on a podium. That's a business plan, business bay, and you have to supposed to sit on a podium.
The building is supposed to sit on a podium.
Very much so, and you put the building on top of it. That was the master plan, right? So that was the first thing.
The first few floors was supposed to be parking, and then you got to the building.
Very much so. So this is the planning authority regulation. So I go back to Christos, of course, and I put the pressure on Christos and say, Christos, this is not going to happen. and it's not buildable. I mean, it's just not possible. So of course, Christos tries his best and comes back and says, no, Zaha refuses. It has to be the perfect cube or no building. So I fly down to meet Zaha.
Where?
In London, back in the same office. And I say, Zaha, I mean, I love the cube, but can you please make it stand on a car park, some pretty car park, design it however you want, but that's a regulatory challenge that you need to say here. He said, no. I refuse to build a reverse hammer. That's what her word was.
Yeah, so the image is reverse hammer, meaning imagine a hammer upside down, right? Here's the hammer.
I cannot
forget that. Turn it upside
that.
down, you get the parking lot and then the building above it. She didn't want that.
I cannot forget that. I refuse to build a reverse hammer. It's ugly. Not gonna happen. You want the cube, you build it as it is. Or otherwise forget about it.
So what did you do then? Because you were basically breaking the rules that were in the planning permission.
I ran to this gentleman, Mr. Ali Brahima. He used to head the planning of the entire government. And I showed him this beautiful cube. And I told him, Mr. Ali, please help. I have this phenomenal architect that is insisting. I tried my best to explain to her the rules of the city, the rules of the master plan, why they are, and she refused to accept it. And I'm really determined to build it. And to show you how much I'm determined, and this is no cost saving, as you know very well, this means I have to build 6 basements, which is one of the deepest hole in the whole of downtown Dubai.
So you drilled 6 floors down?
6 floors down. This building you see is 2 million square feet. 1 million above ground, 1 million below ground.
Wow, okay.
Just to put things in context. Correct me if I'm wrong, Christos, right?
How deep down did you go?
That's 26 meters for the whole plot to build full length of plot, and then the project's actually smaller, so the plot is much bigger, including landscape area. That whole thing is the car park. 6 basements, 1 million square feet below ground.
It was the most beautiful basement in Business Bay.
So I said to Mr. Brahima, can you please help? And as what we know of Dubai, nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible. We come from a school that this city has demonstrated to us. If it's worth it, everything is possible. And Mr. Brahima and the TCOM authority, now headed by Mr. Mohammed Bahri as well, has truly one of the unique authorities that actually truly really believe in that and has enabled all these special buildings of mine in Dubai. Mm-hmm. So he said, well, you know, this is the rules, but let me see what I can do. And then he comes back to me, Mr. Ali, and says, well, however, you know, this is an island plot. So maybe we can actually have a special regulation for this island plot because it doesn't touch any other buildings. Creative solution that tick the box for them.
Fantastic.
And it made it possible.
Yeah. So Christos, I mean, we just heard the story of how the building permission was granted. Then you had to execute this building. Mm-hmm. Can I get you to tell us how long that took and how difficult that was, or challenges that came across you? Or?
We said simple earlier. It was simple in form, not in execution. The building, as you know, it's with the basement, with the podium now being in the basement, the 2 towers are coming up on either side. The bridge and the ground floor space merge with each other. So the challenge with this building was actually looking at 2 towers that had to also work horizontally as well as vertically. And the way we developed the whole design was to actually enable a sort of 3-dimensional loop through inside the building. And for us, it's in a way a first prototype of a 3-dimensional urbanism. You know, where buildings don't sit just on the ground, but they also work on bridges, so it elevates the movement within the building. the geometries, the forms are all waving and undulating, so all the columns on the outside are vertical, but all the columns on the inside are very much not vertical, not straight, and actually making all that flow go all the way up was one of the key challenges.
And I think we were having a preliminary discussion before we had this talk, and I think you were saying, Christos, that when you presented something to Zaha and she said nothing, that was a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
Because when she liked something, correct me if I'm wrong, she said nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But if she didn't like something, you really heard her voice.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
That is absolutely right. And we had a few of those incidents, actually, when we were not getting it quite right. And I think, as we were saying the other night, getting to the point where it's not bad was actually the point where you could start the conversation about what it could be. But Zaha was also in that sort of realm, was also a very good teacher and a great mentor, because she wouldn't talk endlessly about architecture. She could, but she would also find the right words to explain ideas that would make your own mind sort of cascade into new directions. And that's how I learned from Zaha over the years. You know, other teachers do things differently, and of course you learn from many different people, but Zaha's ultimate skill was to be able to shift you from one direction to the other, and suddenly you would begin to understand a series of concepts with 2 or 3 words. You know? The idea that you could take a slab.
Like what?
And fold it up and make it into a flying carpet. I just said it to you in the way she explained it in 3 words. But what that means is...
So can you say that again?
You can take a slab, a flat slab, and you can undulate it upwards like a flying carpet. These are words of genius. In other words, you take one metaphor and you change the whole flow of architecture. It's absolutely fantastic. Not many people have the skill to do that. And the reason why I still wake up in the morning and go to that office is because we have internally now that DNA. And I think that goes for a lot of colleagues, by the way. This lingo that we're explaining developed over several years, but I think having these shortcuts and these kind of communications is very, very important to be able to explain complex concepts through very simple language.
Yeah, and I'll come to you right away, but I mean, speaking to many of you here on this wonderful weekend, I've been told that what happened with Zaha is that if someone went to her with a design that was reminiscent of something that had already been done successfully, she wouldn't want that. She was always pushing everyone to create something new, innovation, 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 and that this sense of innovation is now part of the DNA of ZHA, which has allowed Patrick and all of the whole team to really continue forward and forge a path, because you know, I don't mean to draw fashion comparisons, but you know, the House of Chanel, for instance, again, this is a silly comparison, but could have completely disappeared with Gabrielle Chanel, with Coco Chanel when she passed away. And this practice, you know, there was also that risk, but because she inculcated in all of you, innovate, 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 and always be pioneering and forging ahead, that philosophy has created this huge practice. I mean, how many are you now?
We're about 600 now.
600, and you were 300 when she died, right?
Yes.
So this is quite an extraordinary. So before I come to Mahdi, can you explain how you've managed to double since her passing, really?
Well, it was a hard process. Everybody here who works with us knows this. But I think we have a very strong DNA in the practice, as you were saying. I think there is a very solid ethos. There is very good management. There is many people who complement one another. Patrick, Pujan, Charles, Gianluca, Cristiano, Manuela. I mean, there is 350 geniuses in this room.
Wow, that's a lot of geniuses.
And you know, that also calls for a lot of that
friction.
Absolutely, but it's a very fruitful I find, always, in the long run, it's always a very fruitful, antagonistic, but also toward the purpose sort of energy. And I think finding the ways to channel this, and I think our board has done exceptionally well over the last 3-4 years to make that transition. We all wanted to safeguard Zaha's legacy, because that's a very particular moment in time. And in some cases that hurts also because you leave back a lot of our own sort of things, but it doesn't get lost. We're also learning to move forward now. We are also learning what it means to not stop experimentation, to have an open-ended future, to see where things can go. And we don't know where it's going to go, but we're going to try our best to make it happen in the best possible way.
If I could ask everyone to turn off their mobile phone signals, the bells, before I turn to Mahdi. So Mahdi, you wanted to add something to I think when he said flying carpet, you got very inspired, wanting to say.
Yeah, I want to tell you the version from a client perspective, what that meant. So we're sitting in this, and this was always just a cube. And that was the design. And we've been working on that cube for, 9 months almost in the design process, and the structural engineers, calculations is all done. And then suddenly one day Zaha walks to the workshop, and she doesn't look comfortable. She looks at the design, she looks at the cube. She said, I don't like it. I said, and I'm looking at them, and I have my structural engineer sitting and the whole design team sitting. She said, no, I don't like it. And I said, it's the same cube that you designed 9 months ago. What do you mean I don't like it? And she said, no, it's not nice. And of course you can imagine, what goes in my mind at that moment as a client.
How much money you'd spent already? Yeah.
And she picks up her pen and just does one sketch. I remember that sketch, I remember vividly. She tried to explain this carpet that Christos is referring to.
Flying carpet, so with one gesture.
One gesture. And she put this gesture in the structure, in the cube, and pulled it out to this terrace, this white color terrace that you see today. And that was the flying carpet. So she created this, and she said, now it's perfect.
So what is, can you explain, Christos, what was this gesture turned into?
Well, there was a moment where we were looking how to install a lot of different retail units on that level, and Zaha wanted this to be a pure building. She wanted a pure lobby. She wanted, a sort of different streetscape urbanism on that ground level. That's why we got rid of the podium in the first place. So we prepared some proposals. They weren't really coming out very well, and at that point she goes, put it under a carpet. And then you can live on top of that surface and you can do everything you want. It was a great solution. So we went back to the drafting table. After a while, we brought some three-dimensional renderings to show to Mahdi how it worked. And I think we managed to convince him that was the way to do it.
I mean, sorry, I don't see the carpet.
Well, so that resulted into our swimming pool today. I mean, long forward. That was a fantastic idea, because when we converted the retail space that Christos was talking about to our hotel, that became the swimming pool and the terrace and the entire balcony of the experience, and has truly added a lot of value. Because I was quite upset with that carpet,
I'm sure
as you can imagine.
So they were the engineers,
exactly.
I think, too.
And the engineers, because they need to hang it all out and it has to be looking perfect.
But I guess she was right. Yeah?
She was right. I mean, he did remind me a few years later, well, now that carpet became useful, isn't it?
Yeah. So before I turn to Patrick and give him the microphone for a few moments, did want to ask you both. To me, this looks like a very successful project. I was with Melody today. We went outside across the street and took some shots of the building so I could get a more picture of the facade, and it's a very attractive facade. And there were people taking photos of it who were passersby. They were not, Zaha Hadid guests. So clearly this has been kind of like a landmark. And so I'd like both of you to kind of give a sense of why this has been a success? I mean, how can we measure the success of this building?
Undoubtedly, for us as OMNIYAT, the journey was very difficult, very challenging. To build this commercial masterpiece was not an easy statement, but
how many years did it take?
the process with all the pauses of financial meltdown would have been at least 10 years in making, yeah. But what I can tell you is that it was exceptionally rewarding from a learning perspective of how to build these exceptionally complicated architecture, which resulted in the DNA of OMNIYAT. So people talk about DNA of Zaha Hadid architecture office, but I can definitely tell you the DNA of Zaha Hadid has some effect in the DNA of OMNIYAT, and we continue to build exceptional designer-driven buildings in Dubai.
Well, and you can continue to work with them, right?
Well, you never know. As well, Patrick is already, we are in the process and discussion to explore another challenge, so they're one of the submissions.
We've also seen a couple of empty plots nearby, just in case.
No doubt that we will try our best to continue to push the boundaries of architecture. This is a city that is continue to push forward.
Yeah,
this is a building that was invisualized 17 years ago.
Yeah, because let me tell you, I mean, before I hand over, well, to Christos and then Patrick, Zaha Hadid had this constant frustration, which I think is absolutely justified, that she never got a building, proper building, in London. And I remember last time I interviewed her, it was in the Serpentine, you know, the magazine restaurant and the Serpentine North Museum, you know, project. And she goes, yeah, you know. I said, come on, Zaha, you know, you have this new building in London, you see? She goes, no. I said, yeah, but you have the aquatic center, you have the pool. She said, yeah, but that's just the pool. I'm like, what do you mean that's just the pool? It was an Olympic pool. You became Dame Zaha Hadid after the pool. It was so important. But no, she was really not convinced. And that's why it's really quite wonderful, isn't it, Christos, to have, you know, a kind of terrain like Dubai and this island, which was sort of unexplored, to be able to do these sorts of projects. I mean, you couldn't build this in London, could you?
Absolutely. I think Dubai is one of the most vibrant, dynamic cities in the world. And we work many places, China, Russia, Europe, but I think Dubai has something special. It has an X factor here, and that's because the city is young. The city is young, the city is still learning, it's not afraid to experiment, and that fits very well with what we do. And in that way, I think Dubai is going to grow to become much and much more beautiful in the coming years. Every wave of development that it goes through, it brings a new layer in, and I think that makes the city more and more livable. And I think eventually they will also solve the temperature problem here. Yeah.
We will change the climate back. Patrick, I would love you to come to the podium and tell us the story of OPUS from your perspective.
Hi everybody, good to see you, Mahdi, Christos. Wow, it's an incredibly important project for us. I mean, we have been doing cultural buildings, using concrete, and suddenly that challenge to do that commercial mixed-use building, that large project, totally new concept, all in glass. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a really ingenious conception. I love it. And it came out fantastically. And we explored for the first time atrium, bridging, which we have kind of since then developed further in a number of projects, and quite important. And I think the underlying diagram is quite clear with the podium condition. I'm not talking about the car park, and then the two towers and the bridge. But the way this, on the one side, it's a kind of scoop. On the other side, it's a more of an open quarry. And Zaha loved this idea of carving space and scooping space. And you'll see that on the exterior, and you see it again on the interior. So it's a superbly important project for us. And I must say, I think you're amazing, Mahdi, because we have done a number of other sketches for Dubai at the time. I mean, it was this incredible booming years, which actually really made us as well. When we came through 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we had Signature Towers, we had Dubai Opera, we had the Financial Center, and all of these projects, although backed by government, stopped and stalled, and you kept going. The OPUS was never stopped or cancelled. There were certain kind of delays, of course, and that's amazing. This took over 10 years, I think, to come through. And then, of course, also allowing us to do these beautiful interiors. And then there was a reprogramming of the project. First it was just offices, then became hotel, residences, and offices. So more complex and beautiful, very, very different atmospheres in here. So thanks so much for this. It's really incredibly important because that put us on the map for another level of project. Oh, okay.
We'd like to hear from you, Patrick. I was about to say Michael Schumacher, but you're Patrick Schumacher, sir. Patrick, what I'd like to hear from you more is what I was asking Christos, is how you've managed to carry the flame of Zaha alive, which it is in all our hearts of all the people who come across her, but how have you managed concretely to double in size since the passing of this extraordinary woman whose name is on the door?
Yeah, we had no idea that this would work out, that we would have credibility, that clients would come back to us. But we had so many projects in the works, so clients couldn't just walk away. So so maybe that was part of it. So then we kept a kind of wave of openings after openings, you know, for projects which Zaha was designing when she was around, and the media attention was there, and so we kept going, and the big part of the story is also the China, the popularity and the opportunities there, which helped us to grow. So yeah, I mean, we had no idea that we could make it. But in terms of this, we really been like a family when we grew up. And we have so many ex-students and committed designers who've been working closely with Zaha, and students of students, etc. And that DNA has been embedded, and it was never only relying on Zaha. She was incredibly generous with having these workshops and debates and sketches brought out, and everybody can contribute, and everybody feels like a star as well, because they know what they're creating, and they're just getting the pushback. And every project was designed about 10, 20 times. And so that gives people also this kind of thick skin and the knack and ambition. And Christos is one of those guys who's been absolutely incredible, I have to say, in terms of having the obstinacy and willpower towards perfection. Sometimes clients find it hard, but the outcome is great. So, and for Christos, this project was incredibly important, because he had done Wolfsburg, which was an amazing heavy lifting of a fantastic project. And I think he was so exhausted, and it took a while, and that's number 2. When the OPUS came ago, because you have kind of this kind of creative exertion for also a project super difficult. I don't know how long that one took. And then he was kind of, depleted for literally for a number of years, and then this came through. But he always picks up these super difficult projects.
My last question to you. We've had this chat before. I've had the pleasure of being on panels with Patrick, and I always find that when he describes Zaha, he knows her better than anyone on this planet, practically, with the possible exception of Roger. I mean, there's just this ability to understand the complexities and the contradictions of Zaha. And I just wondered how you were able to resist and live through the criticisms, the cancellations, the tearing up, and the tantrums, and all of that.
Well, we just all love her, and she's been an absolute genius. That was clear to me even before I've met her. And then when I met her, it came through. So she's an absolutely exceptional, original, and genius, and has pushed us always to the next level, and is addictive. And of course, I helped her I pulled away the drawings and models she wanted to destroy. so I helped her to be a slightly better person, to not go all out and to destroy everything which she didn't like. So it was a good symbiosis. Anyway.
Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick, for joining us.
I must say, Farah, thank you, Patrick, for that. And
I must also say something. Sorry, Mahdi. I don't think anybody else could have survived it than Patrick. So you have to rate the man quite highly, huh? Yeah.
Patrick just said, I had a very tough father, so the skin is super heavy. Now we know the recipe.
No, I must say, Patrick, yes, definitely it was a challenge to build, but I was truly committed to make that building. And when I made that promise to Christos and Zaha that we will be committed to the architecture, we were truly committed. Yes, it was a painful process. Yes, it was a very, very difficult process. But I can definitely tell you that the result and the reward for me in this journey has truly been worth it. The learning, the know-how, and the reward of the building. So that's first. And second, I must compliment as well that Zaha and Christos and the team of Zaha Hadid Architecture, because every time we pushed back, every design that they did and we pushed back to say that's not commercially viable. And we did push back at every junction, at every corner. This building would have not come up if it would have not been for the OMNIYAT team to push back, because every time they pushed back, they made it commercially viable so I can actually build this building. So
it was to your benefit?
It was a correct benefit for that, and that was the OMNIYAT team work. OMNIYAT team truly pushed back at every junction, at every touch point you see here. There was a pushback, heavy pushback from us to say, well, we cannot do that. But the response we always got, and that's really the compliment I would like to give, they take that response, they take that question, and they come back with an architecture solution that is uncompromised, but delivers our commercial objective. And yes, the process was painful, and it was long, but the result is phenomenal.
It's like going to the dentist, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit worse than that. When the doctor is Zaha Hadid.
Worse than the dentist. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So-
it was very, very painful. I mean, there's many examples. I always use the fritting example. 2 weeks ago, we were here with Harvard Design School Dean Farah, and we were talking, and the subject of the fritting came up, if you remember, Christos. So one day, I mean, this building is under construction. Now, this building is in a full construction swing. Facade is ordered already. And we are building. We are on 3rd, 4th floor. And I get a call from Christos. Of course, Zaha never gives you the bad news. She sends Christos over. And this, he's nice and sees himself through. And he says, Zaha says, I don't want the facade like this. It's too naked. Remember?
Yeah.
Too naked. I said, what do you mean too naked? The facade is ordered already. She said, no. And I have few ideas, and don't worry, it will be okay. So I called my team, and you can imagine what's happening to my project team. They're going furious. Project is getting delayed, everything else. And they come up with this design of this fritting that you see here on the facade. That is actually an aluminum between the panels, right? Mm-hmm. Fritting. That is actually different designs at different panels. So if you look at it from outside, they go bigger, they go smaller, they change. So that effectively meant every single panel, or most of the panels, had to be touched and had to be engineered. And there was only a few people who could actually do this fritting in the whole world.
Yeah.
And they insisted. And they insisted. And somehow God has given me the patience to see it through.
So
but what I want to tell you, yes, they pushed down and made it happen. They pushed down and insisted on it, and I had to take a call between what my team tells me, sanity, and what Christos and Zaha is asking. And
Insanity?
I didn't say that.
You look at this building when the sky is changing,
And now you can
and
appreciate.
on a dark day, it becomes dark and gloomy and heavy and metallic, and then the sun comes up and suddenly it changes slowly and becomes this bright, beautiful thing. This photographer took a picture of it with the clouds reflecting on the facade. It looks like a different building every day, and that's the function of the fritting. And that's why we couldn't let him get away with it. He had to do it.
Yeah, I must say,
think
some
that-
areas they really insisted. And
Yeah.
yes, again, in that time, one architect asked me, so what is it that makes it a successful, this client-architect's relationship? what is it? Because this is a successful manifestation. So what it took, because so much failures are there in this journey, right? In journey of perfection of architecture, there are more failures. There are more designs that have never seen the execution than the buildings that have actually been executed, right? Patrick would know from his experience by far more. So they said, what is it that actually, yeah, voila, 10%, 1 in 10, yeah, 9 out of 10 do not make it to reality. So,
fantastic. I think it's time for us to see if there are any comments or questions from the room, and I wanted to see if Joseph Giovannini had any contribution to make. Joseph is, for my money, the best living writer on architecture. He's a great critic of architecture and an author and critic for the New York Times, and he has written about Zaha and her buildings for decades. So I don't think there's anyone who can write better about Zaha than he can. But so Joseph, I mean, would like to know if there's anything you wish to ask or comment on, and can I give you my microphone? Is there a roving microphone?
Well, after that introduction, I'm afraid I'm going to ask a perfectly stupid question, so forgive me. But it seems that, you know, we all know that Zaha was wonderful from many points of view, but from a developer's point of view, she's difficult because she's changing her mind and she's pushing you to places you haven't been before. To what extent was the myth of Zaha, the Zaha as an oracle, the fact that she's special, did that allow you to make allowances that you might not have made for somebody who's not as mythic as she is?
I mean, I know what I signed up to, if that was a question.
Yeah.
And I had my own level of expectation of what the process is. And the reward that this city...
For example, she wasn't in the room when you first expected to meet her. Christos come, and Christos is a very talented architect, but you were expecting to meet Zaha. So that was an allowance you made in the first place. And the next day she calls and you jump at the opportunity to meet her. So she's establishing herself as something apart, something special, and
no unattainable. It just... No doubt. I mean, for me, I cannot talk about the rest of the clients, but for me, I was in a very special position. I was a startup that started in Dubai, my first project. So and here is a star architect that actually would love to build a building with. But really what most important for me was Zaha was, even though she was mythical and a lot of people used to have limited access, but she would not hesitate to take that messaging skills of hers and SMS you at middle of the night about something about the project. She would be on the point, and she was always kind. To me, as a client, I can tell you she was kind. I know she was not as kind to her people because she was really hard. I could see it in workshops to drive them to perfection, but she was kind. She could find solutions. She compromised in many, many ways to make this opus happen. And that faith and that trust that I had established over the working with her, that really helped me to push through. A lot of junction, Christos knows, came to the point that was very, very difficult. But faith had to prevail. Mm-hmm. Right? Faith had to prevail. And because sanity did not prevail, at that time made no sense. Anything did not make sense. But faith, I would say, the faith that you should have in an architect that you appoint to work with, the trust that you should have, is very important, because as a client you will not have it otherwise.
Yeah.
Everyone here knows Zaha better than me, for sure, so I guess there are no questions so far. I did want to ask something about Zaha being from the Middle East. I'm from the Middle East. It means something, no? For a developer in Dubai to work with a lady who is from Baghdad and who was Arabic speaking and Iraqi and from this region. She was from around the corner, right? That meant something to you.
No doubt, no doubt. I mean, as I get to know Zaha more and I worked with her, that really made a big impact to me. I mean, of course, I'm Iraqi and she's an Iraqi, and I can see what this Iraqi women have done from Baghdad to London to the global icon. And I fought for that position to make this OPUS a reality. With the help of the team, we made this monument today stand, and I'm very proud of the Patrick and the team. And I said that before yesterday when I met Patrick, and today when I met Christos as well, of how they actually managed to control the office post her passing, and how they doubled the office in that duration, and how they continue to drive the legacy of Zaha Hadid. And that is something that I would like to really congratulate the entire Zaha Hadid architecture team that I have.
I would like to actually get Christos to wrap up this session, before I say goodbye to everyone, and explain this legacy that continues to live on, and this power that has doubled despite the passing of the great Zaha Hadid. What is the recipe? What is this miracle that allows you to reproduce, replicate, and grow?
Zaha,
because there's something in the ethos as well.
Yes, it is in the ethos, undoubtedly. And I think Zaha stood for one particular idea, that every day, every project, every circumstance, every act of co-creation, every conversation you have is unique. And once you get that, you get Zaha. Because at every one of those unique junctions, there is an opportunity to do something new. And we can go about all our lives wasting unique opportunities, or we can carpe diem and do things. And for better or worse, we are the generation that will either make or break this planet. So by putting our minds together and being helped to be empowered and empowering others to do what we've got to do, hopefully we'll go through this precipice without destroying everything. And I think that is Zaha's ultimate contribution to humanity.
Thank you, Christos. I did want to end this session, if I can find my notes, with words that she pronounced. At the end of that famous interview of mine, my first interview with her, I asked her, why do you do what you do? And I ended my story with two beautiful sentences from Zaha Hadid that I'm going to end this wonderful panel discussion with. She said, I think it's an incredible thing to be able to make space. It's really the next thing to nature. Thank you so much.